This karambit is the CRKT Provoke with a ZAP Grivory grip, 4116 blade steel, and the super interesting Kinematic Opening System. So the Provoke makes a fun and colorful carry for the summer. Plus in today's video we will look at how it works, and we will also compare it to some other knives, including this IKEA kitchen knife, which comparison will blow your mind. Hey everyone, welcome to Salvo EDC. And let's start with the action, because probably that's the number one thing everyone is waiting for. This Provoke design comes with a so-called kinematic folding system that makes it completely finger safe, unlike traditional pocket knives that can potentially close on your fingers. This kinematic folding system was invented by Joe Caswell, and it is the number one reason why the Provoke looks like a robot from the Transformer movies. And Joe really did an amazing job when he came up with this, because the Provoke ended up an incredibly robust and reliable knife. But on the other hand, it still allows easy one-handed manipulation. Every time I reach for the Provoke, it has a buttery smooth, effortless deployment, and the blade pops open like it was loaded with a spring, even though this knife has a completely manual action. And closing the knife works the same way, just backwards. All I need to do is to push this lever with my thumb and the karambit collapses back into a locked position. After disassembling this knife a couple of times, I must say that even though it uses a lot of plastic, the internal parts are dead reliable. To better describe this locking mechanism, I'd probably compare it to a Spyderco Lightweight's back lock, because it also has a built-in metal spring that actuates the tab that we can unlock by pushing on it. And similarly to a back lock, this tab also works as a detent mechanism. If you ask me, the real-life application of this system is phenomenal, because the Provoke just gets even more reliable if I squeeze it. That way this kind of kinematic knife has no chance to close on me. However, the construction of this knife complicates things quite a bit. As you can see, the CRKT Provoke comes with not one, but 4 pivots. And the question is, will this multiply the blade play by 4? Well, kind of. And now we got to the biggest downside of this karambit design, which is the wobbly blade. And here I wouldn't really complain about precision or build quality. In my opinion, CRKT did a good job when they built this knife, and we just have to accept that this kind of a construction has certain limitations. But it's very important that we are not talking about flimsiness or bending. We are just talking about a very minimal amount of omnidirectional shaking, which is also present when the knife is closed. And I wanted to make sure that I made my point clear, because people might associate this Grivory plastic with flexing, as Benchmade uses the very same handle material on their bugouts. Plus, I also have to mention that as you use the knife, at some point you will probably have a fun time retightening this pivot mechanism. And I honestly wish you a good luck with it, from the bottom of my heart. I'm usually pretty good with pivot fine-tuning, as I service pocket knives not only for myself, but also for my friends on a regular basis. But the Provoke gave me a headache, because when one of the 4 screws is not tightened enough, or tightened too much, the knife will not open smoothly, or simply not open at all. So in the case of this Provoke, I made sure that I used a gallon of Loctite to keep the action smooth as long as possible. These moving parts of the scale are aluminum, by the way, not plastic unlike the green parts. But if you ask me, these two materials work great together, and I also love the contrast of this black metal over the ZAP Grivory. Usually, I don't go crazy for knife scale colors, but this one was really something I just couldn't skip. I really enjoyed this neon green from early childhood, and it has been a constant accessory color in my wardrobe. At this moment, I have these perfectly matching sneakers, for example. I also really like how CRKT molded this Grivory material, because it came out very rigid and robust. Plus it also has a warmer touch compared to the original aluminum. And when I grab it and use it as a karambit, this material choice really serves the design well, because the molded karambit ring has a perfect transition with the rest of the scales. It is not like other sandwich design karambit knives, where the ring and the scales are noticeably apart from each other. Plus this molded ring completely hides this ingeniously designed deep carry pocket clip that has no hotspots in hand, and fully conceals the knife inside the pocket. Also, this Provoke Karambit ring is excellent for retention because it has a very nice thickness, so in some cases when I flail the knife, it gives me a lot more precision and comfort. So I found this specific ring a huge upgrade over conventional retention rings, made of thin metal. And now that we talk about materials, with this karambit design we can pick from 3 different options, including CPM3V, D2 or 4116. And now I was using chronological order because this is the way they got released. And the Provoke also comes with a pretty cool origin story. If I count the straight blade EDC version, and I include the trainer variant as well, this karambit has like 8 iterations altogether. And it started off as a very famous Kickstarter project that was run by the designer Joe Caswell. The OG model was called Morphing Karambit version 2 by Caswell Knives, and it came with a full aluminum body plus a CPM 3V blade steel. But even though the campaign went very well for Joe, not this Joe, the other Joe, as a small American business, he ran into all kinds of production challenges. Fun fact, these are super duper well made, heirloom quality knives, and if you can find them on the secondary market, they sell well over $1,000. This was the point when CRKT saw the opportunity, so they licensed the design from Joe and started mass producing the Provoke super quickly. CRKT was so nimble that the production knives sometimes got to the customers even faster than the Kickstarter ones. The very first Provoke still had the original aluminum body, and it was a very similar knife to the Caswell MKV2. CRKT just downgraded the steel to D2 and moved its production line to Asia. As a result, the price became a lot more affordable. Then later they came up with a very similar compact Provoke that had the same materials. It was just proportionately smaller, and CRKT also introduced this one, which is a much more significant downgrade that now features Grivory plastic scales and a 4116 blade steel. By the way, 4116 is a cheap stainless steel, very common in European-made kitchen knives. It got me by a big surprise, so I had to do a research on it, and then I realized that this very steel is probably the one that I used the most in my entire life, as every single IKEA kitchen knife that I own uses X50CR MOV15, which is an analog to the Provoke's 4116. Honestly speaking, I prefer this steel on the Provoke over D2 because I mostly carry a karambit for self-defense, and such a knife doesn't necessarily need a high edge retention. Toughness and rust resistance are much more important because I usually hide my self-defense blade under my clothing, and I also want to take it everywhere I go, including places with high humidity. Plus the Provoke has another big problem, as this blade geometry is also not slicey at all. So putting a fancy super steel on it would not make a difference, since cutting performance mostly comes from grind angles. And I got a complaint about this chisel grind, because it actually comes with a double bevel, and in my opinion, we would have been way better off with a single bevel. That way this knife could have been used for actual cutting. In this case, with the double bevel, the Provoke just became a terrible slicer. It is very thick behind the edge, and this chunkiness makes it very unpleasant to use, so I usually end up carrying it as just a backup folder and not my dedicated cutting tool. And I can show you a good example of what this knife could have been. So this is the Fox Diagnostic designed by Bastian Coase, and it has a very similar blade grind to the Provoke, except the Diagnostic comes with a wicked sharp cutting edge that, guess what, has just a singular bevel. And it would have been a delight to see the same philosophy applied to the CRKT Provoke as well. In this current configuration, it is pointless to talk about blade steels because the geometry is garbage. If CRKT could provide us with sufficient grind angles, they could also do a premium batch with MagnaCut, because I guarantee that people would go crazy for it. Also, they could introduce a larger variety of colors in their Grivory lineup, because now they only have 4 colors, and I genuinely do not understand why they never made a pink one for the ladies. And I also have an educated guess that OD Green and Coyote Brown would also appeal to many people on this tactical karambit. So as a bottom line for CRKT, this is a cool design with an even greater potential than they realize. Just make the grind less chunky, tell China to put a proper edge on it, and bring in more colors. I could also consider moving this project home, because in collaboration with Hogue Knives, the Provoke would be 1,000 times better. And it would be amazing because the knife space definitely needs a lot more high quality karambits. If you agree, I invite you to watch my latest 2 karambit reviews, one featuring this Lion Steel LE1 or this other one about the Microtech Iconic. You should also hit subscribe because many amazing knives are coming soon. Thank you for sticking around all the way, and I'll see you in the next one.